Hello, everybody. We're going to be starting here in just a couple minutes. All right, let me just get this down here so I can see everybody. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us for NBC Sports NASCAR IndyCar doubleheader press event here at IMS this afternoon. My name is Jamie Palatini. I'm on the NBC Sports communications team. We're going to be joined here by race analysts from our NBC Sports NASCAR and IndyCar broadcast teams: Dale Earnhardt Jr., Jeff Burton, Steve Letarte, Townsend Bell, and James Hinchcliffe. We're excited to be presenting roughly 20 hours of live coverage surrounding the races this weekend across NBC, USA Network, and Peacock. And viewership this season has been strong across the board for NBC Sports' NASCAR and IndyCar coverage year to date. It's our most watched Cup Series season since 2019, our most watched Xfinity Series season since 2017. And on the IndyCar side, it's our most watched IndyCar season since 2016. And that includes 7 races thus far that have eclipsed 1 million average viewers. So what we'll do is we'll begin with opening remarks from each of our analysts, and then we'll open it up to some questions. Additionally, we'll have a little bit of time on the back end for some brief one-on-one opportunities with the guys as well. So with that, I'll turn it over to the group for some brief opening remarks about the weekend, and I'll start here with Dale Earnhardt Jr.
Well, it's great to be back at Indy. Obviously, always amazing to be able to come to this racetrack, and a weekend where IndyCar and NASCAR share such a historic event in such a historic racetrack is always going to be a lot of fun. And we get to see some old friends on the IndyCar side. We all get to enjoy a little bit about each other's discipline. And so I'm looking forward to it. It should be a lot of fun. Got a lot of cool drivers in the field for the Cup race. It's going to be exciting seeing how some of them do. And so there's a lot of anticipation on my end, and look forward to getting the weekend started.
Yeah, it's always an honor to roll through the tunnel here. It's always feel like a guest. Open wheel racing and IndyCar racing built this racetrack, and NASCAR is here is always, in my opinion, we're always here as a guest of that, and it's a privilege to be here, an honor to be here, and the doubleheader makes it even that much more special. The racing. Obviously we focus on the NASCAR stuff, but the IndyCar racing has been really good this year. It's been fun to watch, and NASCAR stuff's been crazy. It's been really good racing. So the main thing is, I think we're in store for 3 really good races, and it's fun to be here with these guys and IndyCar crowd, and it's just a fun energy. It's a different energy than what we normally have, and it's just a lot of fun and a lot of anticipation for the weekend.
Yeah, it's great to be back. I was here for a couple of weeks in May for the Indy 500. That event I've been fortunate enough to be a part of for a few years now. It's spectacular. And really, motorsports globally, you talk about the ratings, but I really look at like global motorsports. It seems like the interest in every series by all the different fans is growing. And I think we have that same sort of feeling in the Cup Series for sure, with so many international entries. So it's just a full, great weekend of racing. Like, if you love racing, you have 3 races here and 1 over at the little track. So there's just so much to do. I think it's a great benefit for the race fan to get a lot of racing in under one trip or one ticket.
Yeah, for me, I just love the contrast of the 2 sports coming together. I like, looking across the aisle at all the different stuff. I feel like in the NASCAR world, when I walk down Gasoline Alley and look over to the Cup Series garages, I almost smirk, because I love how efficient it appears in terms of just a handful of people preparing the cars. And I know that it's just the tip of the spear, that back in, Charlotte or wherever their team is, there's just a massive amount of resources and infrastructure, where on the IndyCar side, a lot of our stuff is kind of all with us all the time on display. Same thing in the booth. these guys have bigger call boxes than we do, and I can't quite figure out which one's better. You're kind of looking over, thinking, is that call box better than ours? Why is his cough button bigger than mine? So, anyways, it's fun to just compare and contrast. And in the on the Cup side, it's just really exciting to see guys like SVG, come back and race again on road course after such an impressive performance in Chicago. I was teammates with him on the Lexus racing team, and I'm not surprised he's doing well, but it's pretty incredible how well he's doing. So all that kind of stuff is just fun to see up close on the same weekend.
It's not the size of the cough button, Townsend. It's how you press it. No, I mean, for me, there's not a lot I can add. These guys all kind of summed it up pretty nicely. This event is awesome. I think for a long time, I always wanted to see NASCAR and IndyCar run together on the same weekend, and it might not have been the greatest circumstances that sort of forced it to happen, I think, the first time, but I think it's been a huge success, and hopefully it's something, whether it's here or somewhere else, that can continue, because ultimately it's about the fans, right? That's why we all do this, and I think this is a great opportunity for fans to get to see the two best series in North America run together, and pretty international flair, as was sort of mentioned. I think across both championships, pretty international grids this year. And as a fan of this sport, I love this weekend, and I'm excited to watch both of these races and excited to be part of both of them as well. So looking forward to it.
Awesome. Thank you, Hinch. Thank you, guys. I think we've got some folks with microphones that are here and available to answer some questions. So we'll open up to questions, and we can start with Jordan over there.
Jordan Bianchi, The Athletic. Anybody who wants to answer this would be great. You guys kind of touched on it, but looking at the schedule for next year, it's unlikely that IndyCar is going to be racing here on the road course at this time of the year. NASCAR is more than likely going to be going back to the oval. The doubleheader weekend between NASCAR and IndyCar seems like it's probably going to come to an end. How do you guys feel about that, and what would you guys like to see going forward to try to preserve this?
Well, I think that everything has to work for it to continue, and obviously if the schedules don't align, then it won't happen next year. But I don't think that that's because the right people in the right places don't want it to continue. And if they do want it to continue, which it should, they'll work together to find those opportunities in the future. And I think that everyone's learned and experienced over the last several years that the two series, to Townsend's point, are so unique to each other and so different that when they do come together, they're both better off for it. And so, although, there's some changes in the schedule for NASCAR, at least I can speak on that may make it difficult to happen next year. I'm certain that the conversation about how to continue it beyond that is happening. At least I hoped it would be, because it's a great experience for motorsports fans in general to have the two series in the same place at least once a year.
Yeah, I have a question for Dale and for Jeff. To my knowledge, it's only the third time in the colorful and long history of NASCAR that a German driver is taking part in a cup race. Back in 70 or 71, we had Ford Works driver Rolf Stommelen. Last year, Mike Rockenfeller, and then here this weekend again. Will you include this in your coverage, that a German driver will race here in Cup?
100%. I mean, that's one of the coolest things about this weekend is the nationalities that are racing in the Cup Series. I mean, it's really fun. It's fun to see, exciting to see people coming from all over the world to run in the Cup Series. This car has changed a great deal in the sport, and there's this window that these guys are trying to take advantage of, where the Cup drivers are trying to learn this car that is very similar to what other cars are around the world. And this is an opportunity for guys to jump in here and take advantage in the way SPG did. Like, he took advantage of a street course. He's extremely fast race car driver. There was not a major advantage in the cars being completely unique. Cup cars in the past were just unique animals. And so that's opened the door for people from all over the country to come. And it's fun to cover that. And our guys they gotta step it up. I mean, he showed them that, like, they need to be better, and it's going to be fun to see them step up. But without a doubt, we're going to praise the fact that we have so many nationalities in this race.
Hey Dale, your love of motorsports and knowledge goes from short dirt tracks to Talladega. You've been broadcasting, you and Steve have also been broadcasting the Indy 500 the last few years. What have you learned about open wheel racing you didn't know before?
Oh my God. Well, everything. I think there's a lot of things about just the Indy 500 itself is I can't even compare it to anything in motorsports that I've ever witnessed. But just watching how I had grew up my entire life watching Indy and the Indy 500 on television, and so and being that far removed from it, I had no real understanding of the aerodynamic and mechanical challenges that the cars are going through and the drivers are dealing with in the race. You thought that, well, they just hold them wide open, and if they can't hold it wide open, they put more wing in it, and then they hold it wide open. But when I came down there and sat on the pit box at the end of turn one and watched them start practicing and heard the exhaust pops and all the things, I was like, wow, they're really, challenged to try to make the cars handle. And I was taken aback by how much discrepancy there was in the field in terms of a great driving car and a bad driving car. I never really had been faced with that reality before in any television broadcast that I'd watched as a kid and a teenager growing up. So that was pretty interesting. That was probably the first thing that I learned right away, was there's a lot more to it than just pure speed and stacking all the downforce in that you can and going around there as fast as you can and drafting and passing. And I mean, it's a handful for the drivers. And then, also throwing the wind in there and how that can affect a car. It's a little bit unique to IndyCar versus what we know in NASCAR. So, but I mean, everything just standing there and looking at the cars going through tech, it was like standing next to a spaceship. It was fascinating. For me, it was not what was unique, but actually what was most similar. So I've been able to cover NASCAR, IndyCar, IMSA, even Supercross. While everything Dale just described is 100% accurate, the cars are totally different, how they drive, what tools you have to turn. In the end, there's this common thread from Ricky Carmichael to Dale Jr. to Townsend to Hinch that, there's a start line and a finish line and a distance, and who gets there first wins. And while that sounds really simple, that's like the common thread. And I think that what makes us all race fans. And I think back to your original question about crossover weekend, that's what makes a race fan, right? They might like a series or a star or a car better than the other because of their personal experiences. But the concept, we get lumped together like stick and ball sports. Well, there's a big variety in stick and ball sports where if you put a circle around racing, while the venues or the vehicles or even the competitors may vary, the concept is very, very similar. And the thread of the garages or the paddocks or whatever you want to refer to it is very, very similar. And that's probably the coolest thing I've seen going from series to series.
Next.
Steve and Townsend, I'm going to pick on you guys. Two different things. One, to follow up on that, how do you sell it to the fans? Some of our race fans can be a little territorial. I grew up in the dirt track world, and you can't get some sprint car fans to watch a late model race, and they're at the same track at the same time. So how do you sell it to get these people to embrace the bigger picture of the they're still four tires, they're still racing each other. How do you get them to catch on to that?
I'd say just hopefully it's selling itself. I mean, we're really, at least I'm not up there thinking about selling anybody other than trying to embrace and evangelize the great action that's on the track. Having been there and lived it as a driver, and just try to let the fans as best we can into the stories of the drivers, the paddock, and also what's going on behind the wheel in real time. It's great to have Hinch just coming fresh out of the cockpit over the last several seasons and into the NBC booth. And I think the the world's getting maybe a little bit smaller in that way, and that, we're going to see Kyle Larson come over next year and do the 500. We've seen, Kurt Busch come over and do really well, and Jimmy do his thing in the last couple of years. And I think it's maybe in this era a little less rare than it used to be to see that crossover. I'm still waiting for the first NASCAR or IndyCar driver to go race Supercross. I haven't seen that yet, but I'm holding out hope as a Supercross enthusiast. But I do think that world's getting smaller. And on the NBC side, I think it's a lot of fun that, one of the common voices you do hear in the NBC sports world is Lee Diffie. And the funny thing happened in the paddock just earlier today. A fan stopped, introduced himself to Lee, wanted his photo with Lee, and said, I am such a big, and I thought the guy was going to say Supercross fan or sports car fan. He said, I am such a big track and field fan, and I've discovered IndyCar because of you, Lee, and your voice. And I think as much as our NASCAR colleagues have bled over onto the IndyCar side at times, or even the IMSA broadcast at Daytona, I just think that makes it, for the casual viewer that might have only been in one specific motorsport, it's a little maybe less, I wouldn't call it intimidating. It's a little easier to make the leap as a fan and say, oh, I'm hearing Dale Jr.'s voice at Daytona. What's this all about? I want to learn more. So I don't know how you see it.
No, I think it's exactly that. Don't think it's our job to sell it. We're analysts. We're going to cover what's happening and just make sure we're doing it in a very welcoming fashion, where if you want to tune in, we're thankful you're here, and we'll explain it from all levels. From our hardcore fan, they need to leave the broadcast thinking they were explained a why or a how that they didn't see, to a brand new novice fan. We don't want them to think that we weren't including them in the broadcast as well. That's really, I think, the biggest challenge, is just to make sure that you are inclusive to anyone that is willing to commit their time to watch one of our broadcasts.
Totally different subjects. New Zealand. We've got more New Zealand drivers in IndyCar than we have Brazilians, which 10 years ago you would have lost that bet if you would have. Nobody would have bet on that. And now we have a New Zealander comes in, wins a cup race. He's going to probably, we're hoping, I'm sure everybody hopes he does well, but probably may not win tomorrow, win on Sunday. But have you guys looked at that, and where's that coming from? What's that? Why are they so good right now? I mean, this didn't start 2 years ago. It's a longer process, but what's made them so good with developing drivers?
You ever been to New Zealand?
I'm going to say. It's a tough question to answer, because it's a country that's got a pretty small population for the number of top level racing drivers they've produced. But they have a pretty rich history in it, right? Obviously going all the way back to Bruce McLaren, and that probably got one generation of drivers going, that got the next generation of drivers going. And you talk to Shane or Scott McLaughlin, they'll tell you that Scott Dixon was a huge reason why they got into motorsports. So I think because it's a smaller country, successful sports people from that country get celebrated in a pretty big way. And so guys like Scott Dixon would have been celebrated, more even over there than as a 6-time champion Indy 500 winner he probably is over here. And that helps influence the young generation. Australia obviously has a huge racing culture. They're close to them. There's a nice pathway to Europe for Australians. So it's kind of an indirect way, but it's impressive. Yeah, that a country with so few people in the grand scheme of things can produce this many top level racing drivers.
I think Dustin had a question in the middle there. We're going to go to him.
Dustin Long, NBC Sports. James, as it's referenced, the next time the IndyCar Series back here, Kyle Larson will be in a car. He hasn't done any testing yet. So, what has he got ahead of him in the coming months to be, not just to be a part of the field, but to be good and to be a competitive one? And I guess for Steve, I asked from a crew chief's perspective. Obviously, Rick Hendrick's behind this, and Kyle's done a lot of the sprint car racing. But if you're his crew chief, knowing the challenges and demands he's going to be facing, what are your expectations, or what are your demands of Kyle while he goes and moonlights in IndyCar?
Well, from the driving side, he's got the advantage of time. I've never seen a 500 deal done 500 days before the race happened. So he's got that, certainly on his side, which means they'll be able to prepare, I think, better than anyone else in the history of like the crossover, I guess you could say. And I know he's going to be on a simulator. He's going to get a test at some point. And, that's a driver that's so used to jumping into different equipment and getting up to speed pretty quickly. I was on hand when Kurt came and ran with us. He was a teammate of mine in Andretti Autosport back in the day. And it was super impressive to see how quickly he adapted, the questions that he asked, how much of a student of the craft he became. And I expect nothing less of Kyle. So he's surrounded by an incredible group there over at McLaren. He's got a lot of great teammates that are going to be helping him. Certainly having TK on staff over there is going to be a huge asset as well. But then he's looking forward to one of the most exciting and one of the most terrifying, I think, experiences of his life. It's going to be a blast. And I think everybody in this room is super excited to speak to him or hear from him after that first run in practice, after that first quali sim, maybe on Fast Friday, and then certainly after the race. But I'm looking forward to a good show from him.
If I was his crew chief, I would tell him we need to get a really hot start so you can really enjoy the month of May. In NASCAR world, if you win, you're basically in the playoffs. To James's point about 500 days to prepare, I think another huge thing in his corner is that his Cup Series owner is a part of it as well. So I don't believe he's going to have to make the tough decisions on where should I be, Cup practice or IndyCar prep or whatever. There's going to be these decisions in the 2 weeks leading up to the 500. And I think if I was his crew chief, my goal would be to make it where those decisions are really easy. That you only get to run your first Indy 500 once. I would try to get us in victory lane very, very early, so my owner and my driver can not just take part in the Indy 500, but to really absorb it. And to do that, I think you do have to commit some time and energy. That would be my goal. Then I'd convince him to take me with him if we win, so I can come hang out and check it all out too.
We'll go to Bruce.
This is likely going to be the last time for a while that we'll see IndyCar and NASCAR at the same track, same weekend. How much do you guys believe we need more of that? And how disappointed are you to see the possibility of that go away next year?
Well, I don't know if it's going away or not, but I do believe that, we just talked about the opportunity for Kyle Larson to run both races. I remember when John Andretti did it, and the buzz that created was great for motorsports in general. And we are seeing a worldwide excitement about motorsports now. And so when you get, one of our biggest drivers driving in their biggest race, that's great. That's great for all of us. So anything we can do, and you're right. I mean, race fans are very territorial, but anything we can do to expose NASCAR to IndyCar fans and vice versa, it only helps all of us. I mean, an IndyCar fan is not going to say, wow, I like NASCAR now, so I'm not going to watch IndyCar. I mean, it's great racing, and so it's important for us to find ways and be innovative. And be honest with you, one of the coolest things about him announcing so early is they got to make the schedules work. I mean, you got to make schedules work. There was a period of time there where the times didn't work out. You couldn't have gotten from here to there to do it. So, when John did it, his dad, I remember his dad walking up to John and saying, that's pretty cool. I mean, or something to that extent, and so here you took one of our greatest drivers ever, and certainly the hero of the time, and he thought it was great for motorsports, and I'll never forget that. And so anything we can do like that is good for all of us. So we double header, whatever it happens to be, is good for motorsports, and it's good for each individual series.
I mean, I'll just add that while the doubleheader is great, I don't think it's the only option. I think that the way that the series interact with one another within their schedules, within the series, within circuits, all of that adds value as well. He brings up the schedule for the Indy 500, but it's more than just that. It's what would the Rolex be if it was up against the Indy 500 or the Daytona 500, right? It's more than just where you're at on the same weekend. It's what's your global footprint looks like from January to November. And I think that if stars like Kamui are willing to come run a NASCAR race, or Kyle Larson willing to come run an IndyCar race, I really hope there are weekends somewhere that whoever, Pato wants to come run an app, like whoever, you just hope that their time allows it. And I just think these stars don't really control a lot of their time. So you just hope the people that do, and the series that do, hope that is in some sort of consideration.
And a question for James. Graham Rahal was in here, and he brought up your name as an example of somebody who, you could be crushed by this place one year and come back and be on the pole for the Indy 500 the next. You've experienced the highs and the lows. To see what he's been able to do since he missed got bumped out of the Indy 500 this year, and then now he's back a few months later and he's on the pole.
Yeah, I mean, it took me 12 months to do that. He did it in a couple months. Experienced kind of both ends of that on this place. But no, it's an incredible turnaround. It just shows you, how unpredictable this series can be and how competitive it is. A guy that's at the bottom of the barrel in May is sitting on the top of the pile here in August. And huge congrats to that, team and to Graham for the effort they put forth. It's like I said, I've been there. I know how tough May was for that group. And to only be a few months removed from that and have not just him on pole, but Christian up there on the front row and Jack in the top 10 as well before the penalty is a huge result for them.
Wolfgang again.
James, a little technical question for you. NASCAR is running on Goodyear, the IndyCar on Firestone. Do you think there would be a bit of grip-wise at disharmony?
Well, normally different manufacturer rubber isn't very compatible with any other manufacturer rubber. So I suspect, as they saw last year, there'll be a little bit of an issue right after either the Xfinity cars run or Cup practice or whatever. But we're used to that for a long time. The junior categories have had different rubber, and so even though a Cooper rubber versus Firestone versus Goodyear is all going to interact a little bit differently, it's nothing that they haven't dealt with in the past. So these guys are pros; they'll figure it out.
Jordan Bianchi, The Athletic. On this weekend, are you guys surprised that we haven't seen more crossover, like an IndyCar driver kind of running the NASCAR race or a NASCAR driver venturing over and running the IndyCar race? Because that was kind of part of the allure, if you will, of this weekend.
I'm not that surprised. I think it takes a lot from a planning standpoint, and it's tough to bounce back and forth between cars like that. I think you've seen that with some of the greatest drivers in the world coming to the Indy 500 with months of planning and preparation and all the testing that's available to you for Indy. And you see an Alonso come over or Kurt Busch or whatever. They've done well, but boy, they'd be a lot better with 3 or 4 attempts, And I think vice versa for an IndyCar driver to just hop in, maybe save for Scott McLaughlin. He's got a pretty good bedrock of experience that obviously with SVG's performance could transfer, but it would be very difficult to just hop in on sort of a spontaneous basis. And I think so much planning goes into making these things happen that it's prohibitive against spontaneity.
Go on the front first.
Sorry to put you on the spot, Dale, but I'm going to do it anyway. 2-seaters are out running around right now. Have you ever gotten a chance to drive one of those?
No.
If you did get a chance, who would you want to give a ride to?
Oh, I don't know. I probably wouldn't want anybody to be in there with me the first time. I mean, I think that ship sailed, man. I sure missed some opportunities to drive an Indy car around here, and I probably should have done it, and I'll be a regret of mine for a long time. But I rode with Mario, and that was cool. I couldn't see anything, but just riding with him was great in any kind of car. So, but yeah, if I was going to take a lap in a car around here in an Indy car, it probably wouldn't be the 2-seater. I'd want to be full on, strap a bunch of downforce to it, though, make it pretty easy. But I'd want it to be the real thing.
Nobody you want to take out there to scare a little bit?
No, I'd be scared enough for. There wouldn't be room for anyone else.
Do I want Rick Allen to ask a question here? Oh boy. Okay.
You've been to so many street courses with IndyCar. How successful saw NASCAR in Chicago? Did you ever see NASCAR and IndyCar running on the same street course?
I mean, the thought crossed my mind the moment I saw the track on your broadcast, Rick, because it looked like a great setup. I obviously wasn't there. I forget where we were. Chicago weekend somewhere, Mid-Ohio. Thank you. It looked fantastic and turned out to be a great race. There was a lot of skepticism, I know, leading up to it on a number of fronts in terms of how it would work out, but it seemed to race well. It was super entertaining from where I was sitting watching the race, and save for paddock and pit space, that's usually the issue, right? I mean, when we go to St. Pete, when we're in Nashville, you're just always space constrained. just within the IndyCar series and Indy Next and our other support series, SRO that might be running, or even an IMSA combined weekend like what we see at Long Beach. But it was one of my first thoughts is, wow, that could be a great possibility.
Anybody else? All right. Thank you all. As I said, we've got a little bit of time for some one-on-one opportunities. If you're interested, I'll be up here and we can work to arrange those quickly. But thank you all for coming, and thank you guys. We appreciate it.